Welcome back, guys. Thanks for joining in for another video. The star of today's video is going to be the 2017 Ford GT. Now, before you click away from this video because you think this is just another one of those bash Ford GT videos that have been going viral lately, this is not that. This is in fact the exact opposite of that. If you guys watch my videos, you know that I kind of sit on the opposite side of the fence most of the time on auto news and things like that. You guys know how I am if you watch. And with that said, if you have not seen me before and this is your first video that you're watching of me, I want to invite you to go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when I release more videos, because I do a lot of auto videos, I do a lot of motorcycle videos. So if you're not subscribed, go ahead and hop in to subscribe. And also, if you end up liking this video, please click a like. Now that that's out of the way, like I said, 2017 Ford GT. I'm not really sure why this is happening, because the Ford GT is not new news. We've been seeing this car for a long time. You now see them on the road. I actually saw one on the road. And specs and information has been all over the internet about this car for a long time. But for some reason, I'd say in the last month or so, the Ford GT has come back up in the news. And it's not just because they released the top speed of the car. That's not why. It's different than that, because you would think of that as like a positive thing. It would be a positive notion about the car, but it's had a lot of negative videos, especially on YouTube, made about it in the last couple of weeks, really. There are a lot of big YouTubers. You guys have probably seen them. Now, I respect their opinions 100%, and I'm sure everything they say has got valid reasoning, and I'm sure they've got information to back up what they say, and that's perfectly fine. They are entitled to their opinion just as I am entitled to mine. But a few I'll just name off most recently. Vehicle Versions, which if you like cars, I'm sure you know who he is. He's got a great YouTube channel. He did one on how much he dislikes the Ford GT. And then just a couple days ago, Street Speed 717 did basically the exact same video saying what he didn't like about it. And I've watched both those videos, and they have some valid points in there, you know. But from my standpoint, I kind of have to disagree with them a little bit. This general notion that this Ford GT is just a bad car with a lot of negative assets and not really any good assets is kind of crazy, if you ask me. And that's kind of what all these videos are portraying. I think that most of this is stemming from the fact that it's got a lack of your traditional V8, and that it's this diversion from the heritage of what you typically think about when you think Ford GT. Long, small car, big V8, gobs of power. You know, it's kind of made a diversion from that, and I will agree that it has, right? It's still the same general shape. I like the way it looks. I'm going to add that in now. But as far as power plant, it's way different. Now, those guys may have some valid points in their videos as far as it missing some features it needs to have or some bugs that need to be worked out. But how is that any different from any other car that is the first couple years of the production run of the car? So, for example, these are the first years that this new model came out of the Ford GT. Just like any other car, Mustang went through the same thing. The Camaro went through the same thing. The new Corvette went through the same thing. There were a year or so of bugs that they needed to work out because it's a brand new platform. And that's just the way it works. That's not specific to the Ford GT. That's cars across the board. And I think they're unfairly putting that negative emphasis on just the Ford GT when this is not just something that happens to this one particular car. It happens to all of them. So for sure, they have some things to work out, and they will. But in my opinion, I think it's a highly underrated car, not overrated. Everybody keeps saying it's overrated, it's a piece of junk. I don't think it's overrated. I think it's underrated. I specifically think that the engine in this car is an amazing engine. And by the way, for all you Mustang fans that are watching this is probably going to be a similar variant to what ends up at some point in the GT500. I do not know if it will be the first year platform or the second year, but at some point in time there will be an option, it's pretty much confirmed, to have this same motor in the GT500. So you need to keep that in mind when you're downgrading this car, this engine, because this is probably the engine the Ford GT500 will get at some point in time. Keep that in mind, guys. So, but it's a 3.5 liter twin turbocharged V6. It's not new news. It's been around. It's got 647 horsepower, 550 foot-pounds of torque. So you're at that mark right in the same area of most of those supercars that have in between 600 and 750 horsepower. But most of those cars are made with a power, their power is made by a V8, V10, some even a V12. This is a much smaller car, a much smaller engine. And the thing that I like after I read some specs about the particular engine in this car is that it makes its power and torque in a very similar spot. Your peak horsepower and your peak torque both come in right at 6,000 RPM. So whereas your traditional V8 makes a load of torque down low, and then the 5.4 liter that was in the Ford GT is what I'm specifically referring to, the last generation of it. A lot of torque down low and then horsepower up high, whereas this makes its torque and its horsepower in the same place. From a racing standpoint, you would rather have this setup where your power and torque is at the same spot, because then you can gear the car accordingly to make the most out of that power all the time. So with that intention at hand, that has worked out well for them. I think that is that's an awesome thing. You know, that's a major positive about the car that nobody's talking about from a racing standpoint. From a performance standpoint, which is what this is a high performance machine. When your power and your torque is at the same spot or very similar spots within a couple hundred RPM from each other, you can really utilize all of that power and create gear ratios that work with that, where sometimes with your traditional V8, your gear ratios are having to fight the difference between the torque down low and the power up top. You don't have that problem with this car. And then just the fact that the car is confirmed going 216 miles an hour. It's confirmed to run 216. That's fast. I mean, there are other cars that will run that fast, but that's still pretty fast. What you kind of have to keep in mind is when you hit that 200 mile an hour mark on any car, every few miles an hour you get over that mark just gets harder and harder and harder to achieve. You've got aerodynamics that really come into play, and they really kill that performance mark of over 190, 195, 200 miles an hour. In my opinion, any car that will run a consistent amount of miles an hour over 200 is a fast car. And the Ford GT is not just fast in a straight line either. I have to add this in. Nobody's talking about this. These cars have been tested. It's been lined up on numerous tracks next to the McLaren 675 LT and the Ferrari 458 Speciale. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I'm pretty sure that's the way you're supposed to pronounce it. But when they run these cars around these multiple tracks, which they have run, the Ford GT is running around these tracks much faster. And it's not like a marginal amount, like a couple of tenths. We're talking seconds. It's seconds faster around these tracks. Why are we saying this car is such a bad car? That doesn't make any sense. It's outrunning all these other performance machines with a smaller motor and leaps and bounds ahead of them. The technology is leaps and bounds. I mean, to me, I personally, and this is my opinion, the 2017 Ford GT, that is a platform of where we are going in the future. And I think as a car community, we have to realize that. You have to come to grips with that. This is where we're going. We're going to smaller turbocharged engines. We're going to gas plus electric powered engines. We're going to that. That's where we're going. I think it may still be many more years, but there will be a time where these big V8s are gone. And the sooner that you allow yourself to understand these concepts and why they're doing this, the better off you'll feel about these cars. And that's this car, this Ford GT, is an excellent example of where we're heading. Does it have some bugs to work out? Yes, it does, but this is where we're heading. And I think this is a prime example, a good example of this. Now, you know, I am reading that it has bad fuel economy. That's what everybody keeps saying. You make this small motor to produce all this power, and it makes bad fuel economy. Number one, it's basically a race car that you ride on the road. It's a race car for the road. Fuel economy should not even be in the question. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Fuel economy it doesn't matter. You're not going to, the people who can afford these cars are not purchasing these cars for fuel economy. It just doesn't matter. Plus, they'll work that out as they always do with any car. That will slowly and gradually come up. The fuel economy will come up to a more reasonable. It will never be great, I don't think, because it's a performance machine, but it will be more reasonable eventually. It's just these first few cars of the generation that you're going to have these problems. And then a lot of people, the last thing I'm going to touch on is people are saying it's overpriced. Is it really overpriced? I think the question at hand is, does it really matter? The tiny, tiny, small percentage of people that even fit into the category to be able to afford any of these cars that are in the $120,000 to $300,000, $500,000, $1 million price range, it's such a tiny percent of the population. Does it really even matter how much they cost? Anybody who can buy one of these cars, whether it's $130,000 or $275,000, they have plenty of money. So it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, in my opinion. Like I said, guys, all of this is my opinion. I have thrown some factual based numbers in here. Those are the facts. But a lot of this is my opinion on how I feel about the car. And like I said, I watch all those other YouTube guys. They're really funny. They have awesome content, and I respect their opinions. And hopefully will respect mine. Not like they'll ever see my video, but in case they do, hopefully they will respect mine. And if you guys do see it, I don't mean anything towards you about your channels. Great channels. I watch you guys all the time. I'm subbed to you guys. But this is just my opinion. I think we're highly underrating this Ford GT, not overrating it. And this is what the future has to hold for us. So I think we need to strap in, put our seatbelt on, and get to grips with this stuff, because this is how performance is going to look. And the further we get into the future, the more and more it's going to look like that, and the better and better it's going to get. So, like I said, I like the Ford GT. I think it's a beautiful car. It's got amazing lines, amazing drivetrain, lots of power, perfectly set up for racing. I just think it's a great, great package. Is it overpriced? Maybe. Don't fucking matter to me, because I can't afford any of those cars. But maybe it matters to somebody, you know. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, if you agree with me, if you don't agree with me, whatever, let me know in the comments. I really do want to know. And also, if you end up enjoying this video, please click that like button. It helps me out a lot. Anyways, I'm going to end it here. It's gone way too long. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.